Hey everybody, welcome to Relevant Church Online this Sunday. If you're in West Michigan, you know that we are having crazy weather, sub-zero temperatures. So as a church, we've pivoted and we're doing our service online. So welcome, hit that share button. We're excited that you're joining and watching, and we hope that you'll share this and dig into today's message at Relevant Church. Whether we're online or in person, we want to gather around Christ. We want to grow in community, and we want to go to the culture, and that's what we're about. And so, again, we're excited. We're going to ask you to sit tight here and join our Relevant worship team for one worship song, and then I'll be back in a few moments after that to share a message.
I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, and it's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. Yes, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, and it's all about you. It's all about you. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, and it's all about you. It's all about you. Say from my heart to the heavens, Jesus be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about my heart. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. From my heart to the heavens, Jesus be the center. It's all about you. Yes, it's all about you. And nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do. Jesus, you're the center. Everything revolves around you. Jesus, you're the center of it all. You're the center of it all. Yeah. You're the center of it all. Oh, center of it all. Center of it all. Oh, you are.
Welcome back from that worship song, and now we're going to dive into our final message in our Courage Over Clarity Bible study. If you've been joining with us on the app over the past 22 days, 21 days, and you've been engaged in the fast, if you've been studying Hebrews chapter 11, our prayer is that you've been encouraged and challenged both at the same time. And it's been fun to watch the discussion boards and see all of the challenging words, the encouraging thoughts, the prayer requests. It's obvious that God is stirred. We've had over We had over 350 different engagements on the app with discussions alone, and another 200 app downloads to study that devotional. We had people on college campuses, people here at Relevant Church. So you've been a part of that, and we're grateful for that. And we're going to kind of conclude this series today and move on to a new series next week, hopefully in person or online. But today we're going to kind of wrap up this idea of courage over clarity. And I want to talk about between the promise and the path. That's what I want to title this today. It's courage when God doesn't explain himself. And that's really been the theme of all these people in Hebrews chapter 11. And we'll talk about that. But I want to start with a kind of a relatable story. So I'm sure you've experienced this. So you're driving down the road, you've got your cell phone on the dashboard. I can remember the old days when we had a Garmin, right on our dashboard, or a map. Imagine that. But like we're driving down, we've got the Google Maps or Siri's telling you where to go. You're feeling good because you've got a plan, you've got directions. You're just trusting that map, right? And you're thinking, I'm fine, I'm in control, Siri's got me. And then out of nowhere, it tells you to turn left. It tells you to go a direction you weren't expecting to go. And you're like, that can't be right. Like that's not, like I've gone this path, I've been down here before. But because the GPS is telling you to turn right or to turn down a road that looks like it leads to nowhere. I mean, this just happened to me a couple weeks ago in East Grand Rapids. I'm driving to a gathering with our small group, and it told me to turn. It's pitch dark, it's snowy, and we're on this gravel road alley with chuck holes in East Grand Rapids. And I didn't even know they had those kind of roads in East Grand Rapids. So this happened to me just recently, and it's dark and it's narrow and it looks like a mistake. And so what do you do in that moment? Well, you ignore it, right? You just keep going because that's what the GPS told you to do. And then you hear this massive passive aggressive phrase, and I don't know what your voice of Siri is. Maybe you got the Australian Siri, or maybe you've got whatever, and it just tells you recalculating, or it just spins and tells you a new direction, like you're an idiot or something. And so suddenly the route gets longer. I've even been in my GPS where I've circled around and I keep circling around, and I'm lost in a parking lot or in a mall, and so you're stressed and you're frustrated. And then you start asking questions like, why didn't it tell me earlier? Or why would it send me this way? Obviously that's not the right way. It's not the right direction. And here's what I've learned. Well, a lot of us, we do love God, but we don't like the routes that he guides us in. We don't sometimes like the turns that he directs us towards. And so he chooses us to go one way or another. He wants us to go in a direction, and we have to question, do we trust him? So I'm sure that you've all felt that same lost feeling. And we're going to go into this Bible passage today in Luke 24 where these two guys have that same lost feeling. And I want to go to a question. This question is kind of an underlying question of courage over clarity, but it's also a question that I want to challenge you with as we end this study. What would you do if you weren't afraid? It's not a motivational poster. It's a faith question. That's a Hebrews 11 question, because Hebrews 11 is full of men and women who didn't have the blueprint and they got the promise. They didn't have the map, but they knew where they were headed. They didn't get certainty, but they did get a calling. And sometimes we feel we deserve or need both. So I want to end this study with a passage that is in Hebrews 11. I mentioned it just a minute ago, but it interprets it. As a matter of fact, I believe it's kind of what Jesus is going to actually teach these guys. It's a passage that happens after the resurrection. Matter of fact, this is a passage often preached in churches today on Easter. It's a passage where Jesus himself does what we've been trying to do for 22 days. He explains and teaches these key biblical figures to these two guys walking on a road, walking away from Jerusalem, feeling totally devastated, defeated, and lost. And so today, what's going to happen is we're going to see Jesus take the scriptures and tell them about Moses and Samuel and David and all the prophets, the storyline of Messiah, the storyline of himself. And we're going to show you what this whole story was all about through the lens of Jesus talking to these two guys on the road to Emmaus. So what we're going to do, what I'm inviting you to do on this snowy West Michigan day, is to take a walk with me onto the road of Emmaus. We're going to walk that road with these two guys who didn't even recognize Jesus as he walked, because the big idea I want to carry home is this. Courage over clarity is learning to trust Jesus when the story doesn't make sense yet, because he's walking with you even when you don't recognize him. That's the crazy part of Luke 24. If you have your Bibles, I want you to grab it, and because we're going to be referencing it throughout. These two guys who are walking away from Jerusalem, frustrated because they thought Jesus was the one and that he was dead, but yet he was walking right beside him and they didn't even see it. So I'm going to set the scene. So Luke 24 tells us it's Resurrection Day. It's Resurrection Day, and we learn about these guys. They're walking, they're actually leaving. We don't know really why they're going to Emmaus, but they're heading to this small town. It's 7 miles to Jerusalem, and in those days, that was a long walk. I mean, you gotta, we don't walk 7 miles often around here a lot today. And they're talking, and they're replaying, and they're processing. You know that walk, you've been there. That we can't stop and just talk about it because we don't know what to do with it walk, where you've got a friend and you've just went through something really hard. Maybe you've had that same walk around a hospital lobby, around a funeral home, around a school after a tough conversation, maybe even in your neighborhood. See, here's what happens. Luke says something that should stop us right in the near beginning. It says their eyes were kept from recognizing him. So in Luke 24, they're walking and they're navigating this. And this all starts in verse 13, and they're journeying. And he asked them in verse 17, it says he asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along the road?" And they don't know who he is. They don't even recognize him. See, here's what you need to understand from that. Sometimes Jesus is a lot closer than you realize. See, here's the problem. Grief can make you blind. Fear can make you numb. Confusion makes you interpret everything through the lens of pain and loss. And Jesus, he's the one talking and asking the question, not because he needs the information, because he's the resurrected Lord. He asks because he wants their hearts out on the table. See, he says, "What are you discussing? What are you talking about?" Verse 17. And it says they stood still, their faces were downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened in these present days?" So he's talking to them, and they're standing there, they're looking at him. And some of you know that moment. You know that moment, and you're moving, but you're not really moving. You're functioning, but you're not really functioning. You're at work, but you're not really working. You're walking, but you just things feel numb because of what you just dealt with. Things feel so heavy. And they're like, "Are you the only guy? Are you the only dude that doesn't know what happened?" And Jesus again approaches them. And I love this. It's a great verse. Verse 19, it says, Jesus just responds, "What things?" Like, what are you talking about? What things? What things are you talking about, fellas? And that leads to the most heartbreaking line in maybe all the gospel. This is heavy, but I know you can relate. Look what it says next. He says, "What things?" He asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and in deed before God and all people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over," and they go through the whole story of what just happened, and they end it with, "We had hoped that he would be the one." Did you hear that? We had hoped. Past tense. See, it sounds like it's the sound of disappointed faith. It's crushed expectations. It sounds like people who are believing something once was true, but expected a different outcome. So they're not really sure anymore. They've kind of lost heart. And if you're honest, if I'm honest, that line isn't just ancient history. Some of us right now, even in 22 days of Courage Over Clarity study, we may have these thoughts on our mind. Things like, we had hoped my marriage would turn out different. We had hoped that the diagnosis would be different. We had hoped that prayer would work faster. We had hoped that our kids would come back. We had hoped that God would explain himself by now. We had hoped that there'd be more money in the bank account. Or we had hoped that this job that I was pursuing, this degree that I was pursuing, would have happened or happened faster or be a little different. Those words, we had hoped. I know we've all been there because we all live in the same fallen, broken world. And here's what Luke 24 does. It shows us how courage over clarity works when hope turns past tense. So I'm not doing points today. I'm talking movements, because if we're going to walk the walk of Emmaus, if we're going to walk this with these guys, you got to move. You got to get up, even in your pain, even in the heart, even in the fog, when things don't seem clear and we're walking in courage. It's movement. So here's movement one. Movement one, they had faith, but they had lost hope. They had faith, but they lost hope. So let me unpack this. I don't want you to miss this. These disciples, they weren't atheists. They knew the scriptures. They knew the promises. They knew the story of Israel. They weren't walking away from God, but what they were walking away from was Jerusalem. And that's significant. See, they didn't even realize what it had symbolized, because Jerusalem was the city of promise. Jerusalem was the place of worship. Jerusalem was the place of the prophets, and they were leaving it because, at least in their minds, the story was over. It had ended. And the danger for us is the same. See, sometimes faith doesn't collapse because God is unfaithful. Faith collapses because our expectations are misplaced. So let me be clear on that statement. Disappointment doesn't mean you stop believing in God. It often means you believe God would do it a certain way. And when he didn't, well, we walk away. We walk in another direction. See, these guys were leaving the scene. They were probably afraid. They were probably trying to get out of Dodge a little bit, but they were also just heavily disappointed. But we have to know that God's promises are real and God's processes are rarely predictable. See, back to our Hebrews 11 people, Abraham had a promise, but he had to live in tents. Moses had a call, but spent years in the wilderness before it came to fruition. Joshua had the land, but he had to walk in circles to conquer the first city. Rahab had mercy, but hung a cord before the walls fell. And David, well, he had the anointing, but waded through caves and conflict in hiding for fear of his life before he ever took the throne. And what does Hebrews say? All of these people were commended for their faith. They did not receive the fullness in their lifetime. They endured. They welcomed the promise from afar. So here's the first anchor of this sermon. Courage isn't about the absence of disappointment. Courage is choosing to keep walking when hope is delayed. That's what these disciples are doing. Even if they don't have the language for it yet, they're walking. They're together. And they're still walking. So I'm not dogging these two guys. I'm recognizing that in a hard moment, you need to find people, and you need to find people that you can walk with and talk this out. But here's the truth. Their hope was bleeding. They were hurting. And so Jesus shows up. Here's movement number two. I told you these are movements. Movement number two isn't about them. Movement number two is God's movement to them. Jesus walks with them before he explains himself or reveals himself. See, here's what's really a cool part of this story, the part that really actually wrecks me in the best way. Jesus doesn't immediately reveal himself. He doesn't just show up on the road and say, ta-da, hey guys, it's me. You know, he doesn't like fist bump them or high five them. See, I'm resurrected. He doesn't rush to them. He doesn't shame them. He doesn't overwhelm them. Here's what he does. He walks alongside them. In other words, his presence comes before his explanation. Let me say that again. Courage over clarity is about recognizing that God's presence is going to come to you far before any explanation. Because most of us, we want the opposite. We want God to explain first, then I'll trust. Show me the plan, then I'll follow and obey. Guarantee the outcome, and then I'll surrender. But Jesus does it often in reverse. He joins you before he answers you. He stays with you before he teaches you. He walks with you while you're processing. And that's formation, not information. It's formation. He's forming you. See, God is more committed to forming you than informing you. You've got to be informed. We've got to read our Bibles. We've got to study Luke 24 and all the other passages and people. He's going to inform them. But before he does, he wants them to know that I'm with you. I'm walking with you in your time of hard despair. And so God is more committed to that. And that's important to know. So let me make it practical. Some of you are praying, God, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're doing in my life. And then God's saying, I'm doing something in you while I walk with you. So let's just keep walking. But it's hard. I don't know where I'm going. It's a long walk. I'm leaving things. It's challenging. No, let's walk together. Because clarity can make you confident for a moment, but presence makes you faithful for a lifetime. That's why Hebrews 11 keeps pointing us to this word of endurance. In the 2026, we call it grit. Endurance is courage stretched over time. And it's not flashy, it's not always emotional, it's not always just in the moment, but here it is. It is faithful, and Jesus is walking with them to build endurance in them. And even though they don't recognize him, I want to ask you this: where might Jesus be walking with you right now? Where is it that you've mistaken his silence for absence when actually he's just walking, listening, trying to encourage, ask questions? Where might Jesus be nearer to you than you think, and where you've assumed if he was here, I'd feel different? You don't feel different, but that's because you're pretty self-absorbed in the moment. I'm pretty self-absorbed at times, and when I'm self-absorbed, I often miss him because sometimes he's there and your eyes are kept from seeing or recognizing him, but he's still there, and we see that in this story. Here's movement number 3 that we find from Luke 24. Jesus rereads the Bible with them. I love this part. I love this part of the scriptures. So he says to them in verse 25, he says, how foolish you are and how slow to believe all the prophets have spoken. And then he goes on, did not Messiah have to suffer these things to enter his glory? So he says, you foolish ones, slow to heart, believe the prophets. So he's now starting to talk about the same list we've just been studying. So that line can kind of sound harsh, like, okay, Jesus, like, chill, man, they just watched you die. But it's actually mercy because Jesus is confronting the real issue. They had the information. They knew it all. They knew, and that's why I think the writer of Hebrews 11, he doesn't give everybody's life story because he's assuming the readers know these people and their stories. They didn't lack the information. They lacked the trust in what God had already said. Matter of fact, these guys just days ago had heard Jesus himself say, the Son of Man must die, be buried, and raised in 3 days. But right there in the Gospels, they don't understand it. And so Jesus goes on and he gives this interpretive key, what I just read. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer before he enters glory? It's a great verse. It's a hard verse. It's a hard verse that we have to wrestle with. And so it says, in beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said of the scriptures concerning himself. So this is a key component. Suffering before glory, cross before crown, rejection before reign. And it's not a random Christian slogan, even in this moment. The Bible, it's the Bible's architect. It's the map. Maybe nothing is more clear in the Bible than this. See, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, it says Jesus explained all these things concerning himself. So I want you to picture this. He's on this road with these two guys, lost, hurting because they think he's dead and gone, and yet he's teaching them. I mean, this is the greatest Bible study ever. Jesus opens Moses. Jesus opens the prophets. He opens the Psalms. He doesn't say, let me give you a fresh new word or some kind of new idea. Let's write a book, the 7 habits of whatever. No. He goes to the old. He says, let me show you what's been true and promised all along. And this is the point I want to drive home for the conclusion of Courage Over Clarity. Hebrews 11 isn't a random list of heroes. It's a storyline moving towards Jesus, towards Him. See, the heroes, the people, they weren't the sinner. The Messiah was the sinner. Jesus was the sinner. Listen to this. Abel's better sacrifice points to a better sacrifice, a better blood. Noah's ark points to a rescue through a bigger judgment. Abraham's promised seed points to the true seed, the seed that would bless all nations. Moses' Passover lambs pointed to the Passover lamb. Joshua's conquest and taking of the land points to the one who is a greater king and one who would cross over and reign on this land forever. Rahab's scarlet cord points to a mercy through blood. And an ingrafting of the foreigner. David's throne points to the everlasting throne. More and more scriptures than even about the cross talk about the one who will one day reign forever on David's throne. The prophet's suffering points to the suffering servant and the returning king. So yes, this is courage over clarity, but it's not courage floating in the air. It's courage anchored in the Messiah, who fulfills all these scriptures, because what he's telling these two guys, what he's telling you and me today is, look, this is all about me. Let me say it like a coach. I speak the athletic language. Let me put it as plain as I can. If you don't know where the play is going, here's what you do. You panic. But if you know the system, you can run your assignment, and even under intense pressure, it'll work. You can run it. And Jesus is showing them the system right here, right now. He's saying, guys, here it is. From Moses, and that means from Genesis on. The system is God's plan is always centered around Him. This is how it was supposed to be. And that's why the prophets matter. And that's why the Old Testament matters. And that's why Hebrews chapter 11 matters. And it's also why He wanted them to see suffering before glory matters. We talked about this more detailed in the devotional. So if you haven't seen that yet, I go back, grab the app, get in there. Day 20, 21, and 22. But even in our lives, we have to recognize that sometimes it's suffering before glory. But glory's coming. Here's movement 4. Movement 4 is courage is born when finally Jesus is recognized. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that next big thing. So here's what's fascinating. They've just received the best Bible study in all time. I mean, can you imagine just moments after the resurrection and just two of you and your best friend, you're walking this road and Jesus is walking with you and you don't know it, it's Him, and He's teaching right from memory everything about the Old Testament for 7 miles. Can you imagine what that's like? And yet Luke tells us their eyes, they don't open on the road. Never once is there a, man, you know a lot, or wow, like you must be Him. And never once did they recognize Him. I don't fully understand that. I've read where some say, well, it's because they were just blind in their selfishness and despair. I don't know that I believe that. I'm not so sure God, Jesus Himself wasn't just kind of like, let's go through this. This is going to be for even a bigger purpose than these two guys in the moment. And so I believe that they had some level of spiritual blindness, probably some level, somewhere in between. There was a tension there. And so what do? They get to the home. Luke 24 says, as they approach, verse 28, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued as if He was going to go on. Can you imagine that? What if He'd have went on? What if He'd have just went on? They would have never known it was Him. But it says they urged Him strongly, stay with us, for it is nearly evening, the day is almost over. So He went in to stay with them. And listen to this, verse 30, when He was at the table with them, He took bread, He gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Much similar language to like the Last Supper. It wasn't the Last Supper. It wasn't a Passover meal. But they're sitting there, and they give Him bread and something to drink after a long walk, and He breaks it, and He prays. And it says this. It says, Then their eyes were open and they recognized him. At that moment, they recognized him and their eyes were open, and then he disappeared like a snap at the table from their sight. I want you to think about that. They invited him in. He takes the bread, he blesses it, he breaks it, he gives it, and he says their eyes were open. He didn't give them a lecture, he didn't an explanation. At the breaking of bread, at a moment of deep communion with God at the table, their eyes are open. And all of a sudden, like, it's almost kind of funny, but it's really, really profound. It's like the Lord saying, you don't get to cling to me in this moment. Now you got to go live it and tell what just happened. You got to go speak it. It's like he was planting something in there during the time, the long, painful, hard, unclear walk. He was doing a work in them. And so in that moment, bam, and now go. So their response was what it's kind of funny, but they said, did not our hearts burn within us while we talked on the road? So immediately they're like, well, hello, duh, we knew, we felt it. We just didn't understand it. We felt it when he opened up the scriptures. I mean, like with Jesus teaching you, are you serious? See, that's the outcome of courage over clarity. Not now everything makes sense, but my heart is burning again. My heart is awakening again. I am moved in a direction. Burning heart means hope's alive. Burning heart means endurance is possible. Burning hearts mean Jesus is more real than your cloudy, foggy confusion. So courage over clarity is recognizing that you have access to that resurrection power. Jesus is still drawing near. He's walking with you. He's still opening the scriptures. When you start your new devotion, I'd encourage you. If you're in a Bible study, we're doing another one in the app. You can check it out. If you go to that final thoughts video, we're going to be studying the book of Matthew. But whatever you're studying, ask God to walk with you and ask God to open up your heart and the scriptures. Because here's the key. I'm going to end with this. He's still taking those we had hoped hearts and turning them into burning hearts for him. We said in the Bible study, I'm going to say it here, Maranatha. Maranatha simply means the Lord has come, the Lord is coming, and we want to acknowledge that, and we're grateful for that. If you are outside of Christ, here's the thing. We're going to put a website link. We're going to put a link right here on the screen. You can write it down. Go to the Relevant Church website. Fill out a connection card. If you want to connect with someone, connect with a ministry, get involved with church, get involved with service, we would love to be able to connect with you. Whether you're online and you're from another state or another country, or whether you're in Grand Rapids and you want to learn more about what it means to take your next step to be a part of Relevant Church, this snowy, cold weather isn't going to be here forever. We're going to be back together. And we want to invite you to be a part of Relevant Church. We're grateful again that you've joined us here this morning. We're grateful for those of you that have joined us for the Courage Over Clarity Bible Study. And here's what else I'll say. If you're sitting there going, Courage Over Clarity Bible Study, what is that? Check out our website. You can go back and start today, day one, and start going through this Hebrews. It could be a great study to do your Emmaus walk. We're all on the Emmaus walk. We're all walking in a direction, and God's walking with you. So blessings to you on this Sunday, and we hope to see you soon back in person at Relevant Church.